Record. All right, so we're gonna be solving rational equations. This is super easy. This is not as hard. That the adding subtracting is way harder than this. What we did yesterday is way harder than this. And the reason yesterday was a little bit difficult is because of the adding and subtracting. That's what makes that harder. If I just gave you one of these, like one of the ones we had in the beginning that were complex, where they was just one fraction over one fraction, it makes it easy. The complex fractions have the adds and subtraction. Those are what makes it hard. Now, these do have add and subtract, but you're going to get rid of the denominators at some point. What you want to do is get a common denominator. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to look at the bottom and we see that it's 6, 6, and 2 for our numbers. So we want to find our least common denominator, and that's from like elementary school, okay? So can I make one of them look like the others? So what I'm saying is these 6s are the same. Can I do something to the 2 to make it a 6? What can you do? Multiply it by 3. What I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. So we're going to multiply this bottom by 3. So we're going to multiply the top by 3. And I'm not going to put that other, I'm not going to put the other parenthesis on just yet. Well, we can do it. All right. Then whatever variables you have, you want to have the same amount in all of them. So you're going to go with the highest amount. So this one has 2 A's. This one needs one more A. You guys see that? So I'm going to put it on the top. It needs one more A. And this one only has one A. So it needs another A. Okay. So find your common denominator. Whatever you don't have, put it with the top. Once you get that common denominator, they don't exist anymore. We do not need them. When we solve it, they'll solve themselves out. So there's no point in having them on there. Okay. So then we solve the top. We have 1 times A, which is A. In the middle, we didn't do anything, so we have a 1. And then multiply this. 1 times 3 is 3 times A is 3A. Finish it up by solving it. I'm going to get A on both sides, away from both sides, sorry, and put it on one side. So I'm going to add this 3A over. And I get 4A equals 1. Solve for A. And I get A equals 1/4. My pencil does not want to write. The paper is kind of like weird. I guess because it's been in here, like gross. It says at the top to remember to check for extraneous solutions. We would have to plug this in where an A is and make sure it doesn't make a 0, just like we did in the very beginning, okay? So 6 times 1/4 is not a 0. 6 times 1/4 squared is not a 0, not a 0. So this one is good. All right. The only time you typically have extraneous solutions is going to be if you get 0 for an answer or ones that have pluses and minuses in the bottom. So those are the ones that you really have to check. All right, so look at the next one. We have an X, and a 4X. How can I make this X look the same as the other one? That's all you do. What I do to the bottom, I do to the top. So we can multiply by 4. Same thing on the next one. It's just a single X. It needs the 4. And this one has it. So we're done. 2 times 4 is 8 equals 1 times 4 is 4. And we didn't do anything to this top, so we just write it down. Clean it up. 8 equals 4 minus 3 is 1 plus X. Solve for X, we're going to subtract 1. And we get 7 equals X. If we plug 7 into all of these, we do not get 0, so we're good to go. Okay. What's your common denominator for number 3? N squared. So the first one just has N. It needs a second N. The second one just has a 1 N. It needs a second N. And the last one has both. We mark out our denominators. And we solve what we got. 1 times N is N. Minus 2 times N is minus 2N. Equals 2N plus 4. Clean it up and solve it. N minus 2N is a negative N. Equals 2N plus 4. You're going to subtract 2n. And we get negative 3n equals 4. We're going to divide by negative 3. And n equals negative 4/3. I'm going to skip for a minute down to number 7. Number 7. Okay. The reason that I'm skipping to number 7 is because you can see what your common denominator is. They all three have to have that common denominator. So this 1 needs to be over an r minus 5. Whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. Or something. All right. So then our common denominators mark out. We distribute the 1, and in this case, it doesn't really change anything. We get r minus 5 plus 1 equals 7, all of the numerators. Clean it up. Negative 5 minus 1 is negative 4. Add your 4. And r equals 11. When we plug this one back in, 11 minus 5 is a positive 6. It's not 0. We're just good. We do not want it to equal 0. All right, I'm going to go to number 5. It's the next easiest one. So if we look at number 5, we have a trinomial and a binomial and the same trinomial. So our common denominator is probably going to be this, okay? So where do they get everything else? We're going to factor this out. What are your factors of negative 18 that add to 3? That's going to be a plus 6 and a minus 3. Okay, so this one has both of those as well. They have the plus 6 and the minus 3 because that's what this factors into. But the middle one only has the plus 6. So it only has b plus 6. So what does it need? That's what we're going to put on top. What it needs is the b minus 3. All right. Our denominators do not matter anymore. We're going to rewrite the top. We have 8 equals. Distribute. 3 times b. 3 times negative 3. And then we have a minus, watch in the middle there, minus 5. That's the equation that we're trying to solve. We're going to clean it up and solve it. Negative 9 minus 5 is negative 14. We're going to add 14 to both sides. We get 22 equals 3b. We're going to divide by 3. And we just get 22 over 3. If you want to give me the decimal, that's fine as well, but they're going to probably keep it as a fraction. If we try to plug that back in, we're not going to get 0, so we're good to go. All right, so again, what you want to do is factor what you can so that you can find that common denominator. So if we go back up to number 4, try to get all of that on at one time. If we look at this first fraction, the denominator will factor with a GCF of x, and we get x plus 6. The second one is the same thing, x into x plus 6. But the last one is only x, so what does it mean? Not 6, but x plus 6. So here's what I'm talking about. They all have that x. What do they not have? It's what I've not highlighted, the x plus 6. So you need the whole thing. You can't just put a plus 6 on it, if that makes sense. Okay. So we're going to put an x plus 6 on the bottom, which means we're going to put it on the top. Once you get that common denominator, all your denominators mark out. You don't need them anymore. And we rewrite the numerators. 2 equals 1 plus. We've had easy ones to distribute because we've had ones. 1 times x is x. 1 times 6 is 6. clean it up and solve it. 1 plus 6 is 7, so x plus 7. And then we're going to subtract 7. Then we get negative 5 equals x. No matter where I plug negative 5 in, it's not going to give me a 0. So our final answer is x equals negative 5. Nose is itchy, sorry. Same thing on number 6. Whatever you can, you want to factor. If we look at the bottom, this has a GCF of v, which leaves v plus 2. The second one is the same way. If we look, they all have v plus 2. What do they need? This one needs a v. So what I do to the bottom, I do to the top. Once you get your common denominator, you don't need them anymore. And you write the top down. 8 equals 1 minus 1v, or just v. We're going to solve, subtract 1. We get 7 equals negative v. We can't have negative v, so we're going to divide by negative 1. And we get v equals negative 7. No matter where I plug it in, it's not going to give me a 0. Oh, goodness. All right, so in the next one, if we look, n plus 2 will not factor, n squared will not factor, but this one will. It has a GCF of n. GCF n plus 2. Okay. So check this one out. This one's probably one of the more difficult ones, but it's not too bad. This one has the n plus 2. This one has 2 n's. This one has 1 n and the n plus 2. So what do you think your common denominator is? Remember what I told you about single variables. You have to use which one? So if we go back up to this one, we had the a squared, right? So we had to make both of these a squared. So our biggest n is n squared. So what do I got to do to this one? Put an n, right? I need to make it n squared. Okay, so my common denominator needs to be n squared and n plus 2. So the middle has n squared. What does it not have? It needs the n plus 2. What I do to the bottom, I do to the top. And then the first one has the n plus 2, but what does it need? N squared. So again, make sure you do the highest power for the single variables, the ones that are not plus or minus. All right, so now we don't need our common denominator. Anything on the back. All right, we're going to write this down. We have 1n squared equals, I'm going to write it down so you guys can see it, n plus 2 times n plus 1 plus 1 times n, which is n. This is what we're solving. We're going to distribute right here. It's a double distribute. N times n is n squared. N times 1 is 1n, or just n. 2 times n is 2n. 2 times 1 is 2. And then we have a plus n on the end. I'm going to clean this up in just a second, but what I want you to realize is if we have n squared on this side and n squared on that side, they're going to cancel each other out. So if I subtract this n squared, I'm going to get 0. So we're going to go ahead and write 0. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 n's plus 2. I'm going to just copy that over here to the other side. 0 equals 4n plus 2. I'm going to subtract 2. I get -2 equals 4n. Divide by 4. And n equals -1/2. No matter where I plug it in, we're not going to get 0. So this is good to go. So number 8 was one of the harder ones, just because it's set up weird. Okay. Look at number 9. You can already see your common denominator. Both of these are the same. So this 1 needs the v squared plus 5v. Then your denominators are gone. Rewrite it. 1 minus 1 times v squared minus 5v equals 5. A lot of people right here like to subtract those. You can't do that. You have to distribute that -1. So watch that. We get 1 minus v squared plus 5v equals 5. Now realize when you have v squared and v, you have to factor. So you might want to write that down somewhere. V squared and v, you're going to factor, whether that's GCF, slide and divide, cheater method, whatever. Anytime you have v squared and v, or x squared and x. So we have to get it equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract 5. I'm going to put it in order. What do I mean by that? Negative v squared, then 5v, and 1 minus 5 is -4. I don't like to start with a negative, so I'm going to factor out a -1. It leaves me with positive v squared minus 5v and +4 equals 0. We want to get rid of the -1, so we're going to divide by -1. We get v squared minus 5v plus 4 equals 0. Factors of 4 that add to -5 are -4 and -1. Remember, we've learned if it's negative inside of parentheses, when we solve it, it's a positive. So there are your 2 answers. If we plug those into the denominators, they are not going to give us zeros. So this one actually has 2 solutions. 2 solutions. And then one more.
Joan,
Yes.
on the one we just did, number 9,
Uh-huh.
put v squared minus 5v instead of v squared plus 5v.
Yeah, right here. I took out the -1.
First, put it up.
Do what?
Up at the top where it says 1 minus -1, parentheses v squared minus 5v.
Oh, I did do that, didn't I? Well, let's see how that changes it. -5v, -5v, so this will be +5v. This will just change it to a plus. So these will be -4 and -1. Thank you. Next time, yell at me sooner. Sorry, y'all. I was anticipating it. Anybody else catch that? Tell me. Yeah, tell me. As soon as you see it, tell me. It don't hurt my feelings. We all make mistakes. So I'm going to screw up too all the time. All right. Next one. We have x squared plus x, which will factor out an x and give us x times x plus 1. This one is the same way. The middle, we have the x. What do we not have? Not just plus 1, but the whole x plus 1. You got to get the whole thing. So what I do to the bottom, I have to do the top. And we're going to have to end up multiplying those together. Denominators do not matter right now. We're going to rewrite our problem. I'm going to try to do it right this time. Now, right here, we're subtracting all of this. So I'm going to put it in parentheses. That is the biggest mistake that people make, is that right there. Okay, anytime we have a minus, make sure you distribute to everything. So now we're going to clean it up a little bit. This is double distribution. X times x is x squared. X times 1 is x. Negative 3 times x is negative 3x. Negative 3 times 1 is negative 3. Distribute your negative. So negative x squared, negative x, positive 12. What you'll see is when you add your like terms, a lot of stuff is going to cancel out. Okay, so x squared and minus x squared is going to cancel out. We have a positive x right here and a negative x that'll cancel out. So then on this side, we have x minus 8 equals negative 3x is the only x I have left. Negative 3 plus 12 is 9. Solve for x. Get your x's on the same side. So we get 4x minus 8 equals 9. Add 8 to both sides, you get 4x equals 17. Divide by 4, and x is 17 over 4. Any questions? All right, hang out for just a second. I'm going to stop sharing for just a second. Don't go anywhere. I'm going to look at your homework for tonight and make sure I don't see anything crazy. Pretty much the same. Yeah, they're all pretty much the same. Just watch and make sure that you don't have any extraneous solutions. Let me show you one. I'm gonna write it down. I'll turn it back on, but I want you to, this is one of your homework problems, so don't get mad that I'm doing an extra problem. It's actually gonna take away from your homework. And I'll let you copy it down, whether it's on the back of your notes or whatever. That's where I'm doing it. It's on the back of my notes. All right. There you go. Looks like this. Let me make sure I did that correctly. Oh no, they're both p minus 8. This is a minus 8. All right. So on this one, your two denominators are going to be p minus 2 and p minus 8. So this one's going to need p minus 8. This one's going to need p minus 2. And this one's going to need p minus 2. This is a homework problem, so copy it down because that's going to give you an answer to your homework. Once we get that, we don't need our denominator. So this one was the only one that had some weird denominator. P minus 8 in the beginning, because when we distribute 1, we get the same thing. Plus p minus 2 in the second, because when we distribute, we get the same thing. And then we double distribute right here, so p times p is p squared. P times negative 2 is negative 2p. 7p and negative 14. So on this side, we have 2p minus 10 equals p squared plus 5p minus 14. Since we have p squared and p, we have to get everything on one side and factor. So we're going to subtract the 2p and add 10. So this gives you 0 equals p squared plus 3p minus 4. Factors of -4 that add to 3 are -1 and +4. So your two answers are 1 and -4. So these are a little bit cleaner than the other ones. They have pretty good answers. And it's all multiple choice, so you should be able to figure it out. Okay. If you have any questions, make sure that you ask me. You guys can email me. You've been doing a really good job about that, and I can help you out. So just let me know. Again, number 10 is 1 and -4, which is B. So your answer for this one's going to be B. All right. I'm going to stop sharing and stop recording.